Hi, I'm Cindy Wood. Can you hear me okay? Good. With the Planning Department, Nashville Next, and of course, Mike was just referring to some of the work that we do. And what I'm here to talk to you about today is something that's in the process of changing a little bit in Nashville, which is neighborhood planning and also how it relates to zoning, which Mike just mentioned in his talk. Since I've been at the Planning Department in 1990, the neighborhood and community planning program has evolved very considerably. It had just started in 1989, the year before I started, and before that, when plans were done for future growth and preservation throughout the city of Nashville, it was just one countywide plan. There were no smaller area plans, and so when I started, they had just launched this community planning program. And why we're talking to you about that here today is that community planning is what guides the recommendations that the Metro Planning Department makes to the Metro Planning Commission and then on to the Metro Council when someone comes into your neighborhood or my neighborhood or anywhere and wants to change the zoning of their property. And this can tie into a lot of the things that Mike was just talking about changes in character and gentrification and other issues related to change over time, particularly in the area of housing. And basically, plans, when I refer to community plans, I'm referring to something that cities all across the country do. It's not unique to Nashville. Our community planning program is probably a little newer than a lot of other communities. But what we have done over these, past, 25 years, is that we've worked with various community organizations, individuals, and when I say community, I'm not just talking about residential neighborhood associations. I'm talking about business associations, nonprofits, sort of the whole gamut of what we call stakeholders in any particular part of the county to develop plans for 14 large areas and the neighborhoods within them that make up Davidson County. And what these plans are used for is that every time one of these developers that Mike was just referring to or property owner comes in and asks to change the zoning of their property, our staff reviews it against the adopted community plan for that area. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Why I say this is such a changing environment is that right now, you may not or may not be aware of this, but everybody's community plan is part of the countywide general plan, which is once again is something that just about all cities have that are of any size in this country. And what the general plans do is they set the tone for change over a longer period of time, say 20 or 25 years for the whole county, and then all of the other planning documents kind of fit under that larger direction. So why I'm here wearing this t-shirt is that some of you might already know that right now Nashville is in the process, right in the middle of a 3-year process to update that countywide plan through, it's called Nashville Next. And I'm wondering, I know some of you are very much involved in that, but I'm wondering how many of the people here have already participated in some way in that Nashville Next process. So a lot of people already know about it, and we thank you very, very much. And so as part of that, all of the planning documents for the county are being updated and brought up to speed, including the community plan that you're in, which is East Nashville, and the community plan that I'm in, which is West Nashville. And some community plans will change more than others, depending on the change in direction that you take. And I would say, I'd venture to say the areas that are really close to downtown and midtown will probably change more than areas further out, to the extent that their community plan doesn't already call for that. And so you may see some changes to the community plan where you are, which right now in District 5 is calling for your single family areas to remain primarily single family, and then for you to see more of a mix of housing along your major streets like Cleveland Street, Douglas Avenue, Joseph Avenue, Dickerson Pike, and McFerrin and Lishee, which is where you will sometimes, for example, you've seen some recent changes in zoning, I think along Joseph Avenue, and that would be related to the community plan already calling for that type of change to occur, for example. So to the extent, like one of the things I would say that I'm most concerned about being here for is I brought a big old notepad, is that I'm interested in what you're going to say and ask about later on, so that as we work on updating that plan, we can take that into consideration. And I brought a couple things for you that I hope you picked up. One is related to Nashville Next. These are the draft housing goals and policies for that topic area that's part of the plan. And there's an email address that you can write in your comments and questions about this document. And this fall, Paul Johnson, who's back there, wave Paul, is a member of the housing resource team that developed these draft goals and policies, and he is going to be working with his fellow volunteers to come up with actions to implement these. And a lot of these do speak to providing a variety of housing for different needs, relieving cost burdens on households, and on addressing gentrification. So I'm sure he's interested in hearing what you have to say. I know we're running kind of tight on time, which is why I'm kind of going real quickly. But I did want to just make sure that everybody understood, first of all, that when you see somebody come in and want to change zoning or do something that you may wonder why they're being allowed to do it, that someone is looking at a document that people involved in your community did have some participation in developing, and that we do review and update those pretty frequently, and that it's not just willy-nilly. I think that sometimes there can be a lot of conflicts about, well, how do you interpret a policy and a plan? Because the difference between a plan and zoning is that a plan is what is called a policy document. It's a should, it's a thing that we should do, whereas zoning is a regulation, it is a law, it is enacted by the legislative body, which is Metro Council, whereas the Planning Department and Planning Commission are advisory bodies, and that we go through these documents to say we should do this, it should be this way, and it should be that way for these reasons. But reasonable people can disagree on exactly what that means in a given case, and it is something that's a should, it's not something that's a shall, and then when you come through to the part where the actual zoning change occurs, that's when you get into what makes it a law. And a couple other things people often aren't aware of when we go out into neighborhoods that they're very concerned about. It's usually people aren't really aware of the zoning that they have on the property in and around them today. And there's no real, I mean, all of our lives are really busy. Nobody expects you to know what your zoning is and what it means. And I live in Sylvan Park, there's been a tremendous amount of change in my neighborhood too. And it's been just gentrified to where, like, you know, it's hard for me to afford to live there. And there were things that we just didn't know that our zoning allowed, which were like the height of the buildings. And I think that's a thing that's true all over Nashville, just because of the fact that until fairly recently, people weren't building to that height. It just wasn't what the market was doing. We're seeing trends at the national level that are playing out locally, that people want to move closer in. They want to have a larger house. They want to have more space than people did, say, when a lot of these houses were built in the 20s and 30s that are in the inner ring neighborhoods. And so we're seeing these very tall homes that we were not used to, and yet that's something that the zoning was allowing all along. It just never happened. So a lot of it is just maybe not, none of us are necessarily aware of things until they happen. And I also have my business card up there in case any of you want to contact me with questions. I know there's no way I can possibly cover everything about neighborhood planning, and that there's a lot more information and questions that you're going to have. But before I break off, there's one thing that I really want to emphasize that that you've heard already from Mike and that you're going to continue to hear, which is that your continued ongoing participation is critical to the success of any planning efforts. That not only in dealing with gentrification, because, for example, my department doesn't build affordable housing. It doesn't have funds to do anything about it. About all we can really do is work on planning and zoning tools that allow for there to be a variety of housing choices and help with the development of zoning tools to put that into place. But we can certainly work together with partnerships of different parties, public and private. And there are neighborhoods in addition to you throughout the county that are now doing what you're doing, taking the initiative and coming up with strategies. I know I've talked to people in the Nations, the neighborhood that's now being called Wedgwood Houston, the SNAP neighborhood, and then you folks here are, I think, three of the most active. Mike may know of others, but I think those are three of the ones that are really getting out, having these forums, doing a lot of getting down and doing long-term work. And I can't begin to tell you how important it is for you to continue to do that, and we really appreciate that you do. Thank you.